Welcome to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. This program, if you've never watched it before, is a research program. It's geared towards getting people to know what the Hebrew scriptures say and what is the future of Israel, based on what God says, not what the New York Times says, not what the political arena says. It's what God says is going to happen. Now, if you're sitting with your Hebrew scriptures, we're ready to start. If you're a Gentile, turn to the Old Testament in your Bible. It doesn't mean that it's obsolete. It means it preceded the Greek scriptures. If you're a Muslim, download an app, free computer type Bible, and you can follow in the first book, which is Genesis. We're going to do a little recap here. You know, there's three patriots. There's Abraham, the father of faith. There is Isaac, the son, the sacrifice son. And then there is Jacob, the servant. And, you know, if you're a Gentile, you might look at it like the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Why do I say that? Is, well, you know, if you don't understand what Gentiles believe, it's not three different gods. It's one God and three divine persons. I was somebody's son, but I became somebody's husband, and I eventually became somebody's father. So you see, there is one God, and it's only the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Jacob returned home because after 20 years, God sent him back to Israel to take his possession, to occupy the land. He came back and he made peace with his brother. After his brother threatened to kill him, he loved him. He didn't even want to accept the gift, but he finally did. Unfortunately, between the time he meets his brother and the time he gets to Bethel, his daughter gets raped. And his two sons take revenge on the people who raped her, which displeased Jacob. So, we're going to skip over the genealogy of his brother, which is basically the Arab nations today. And we're going to go straight to the most famous son that Jacob had, which is Joseph. Now, Joseph was the 11th child, not the firstborn, but he was the firstborn of his mother, which was Rachel. And as they're going back to Bethel, his mother dies giving birth to a younger brother named Benjamin. And so now Jacob is left with Leah, his first wife, and two servant girls. But together they have at least 12 sons now and one daughter. So we'll start in chapter 37. And it starts off with Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. Now, for modern people, we'll just call it Palestine, all right? And this is the account of Jacob. Now, they say this is the account of Jacob, but they're really going to tell you about his most famous son. And it says, Joseph was a young man of 17, okay? And he tended the flocks with his brothers, all right? Now, Israel loved Joseph. When you hear the word Israel, we're not talking about the country. Remember, God changed Jacob's name to Israel. Why did he change his name? Well, Jacob meant sort of like a swindler, somebody that did his brother out of his birthright. But since his brother didn't respect the birthright, and Jacob did, God honored that. And he protected him and he prospered him. Okay? When you look at Jewish people and they prosper, God has something to do with it. Okay? So you better not mess with it. All right? And you better not feel guilty about it, that God's blessing you. Okay? He wants to bless you. So, what happens is here is that Israel, which is really Jacob, he loved Joseph more than any of the other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made a rich ornament robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any others, they hated him and could not even speak a kind word to him. Parents, I just remind you, you might love one person more than the other, but showing favoritism to them might puff them up a little bit, but they'll pay a terrible consequences from their peers, especially in a large family. So Joseph has a dream, and when he tells it to his brothers, they hate him all the more. Why? He said to them, "Listen to the dream that I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, and suddenly my sheaves rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of the dream and what he had said. Now, when God reveals things to you, sometimes it's good to keep it to yourself for a while. Okay? There's a perfect time for everything. Well, listen to what happens next. Then he had another dream, and he told his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father, as well as his brother, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept matters in mind. Well, later on you're going to find that there was a woman that was told by prophets certain things that were going to happen to her son, and she kept them in her mind. Okay? Well, what happens next? Now his brothers had gone out to graze their father's flocks. Okay? Now they actually went back up north where their sister was raped, which is odd to me, but anyway. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing their sheep and their flocks." So he tells them, "Go, and I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replies, very obedient. His whole life is obedience. So he says to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers, with the flocks, and bring back me word," more or less. You know, no cell phones, no telephones, no teletypes. You had to send a messenger. "Bring word back to me." And then he sent him off. And so he goes up north. It's quite a journey. I don't know if it was 90 miles, but I'll bet it was 30 or 40 miles. And so he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring me word back." All right? When Joseph arrives there now, he's trying to find him, okay? And in the past, he used to bring his father back reports that were not good about what they were doing, and that's got him in trouble even more, okay? So that's another thing. When you're given responsibility and authority, you know, people don't like those in authority lots of times, okay? So he wandered around the field, and he was trying to find him. And someone asked him, "What are you looking for?" And he replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their sheep?" So, oddly enough, the man knew where they were, and it was over a ridge on the other side, which was towards the Mediterranean. So now he's got to follow them over there. Okay, now he might be 90 miles from home. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them there. Okay? Verse 18 says, "But they saw him in the distance." Well, naturally, he had this beautiful coat. Okay? He wasn't an ordinary man. What did the coat represent? it really did represent authority. You know, it's like going into a restaurant and there's a guy with a black jacket and a bow tie and a beautiful shirt. You know he's the maitre d'. He's in charge. You want a seat, you're going to go and talk to him. If the place is crowded, you might have to tip him to get a seat. Okay? Well, he's in charge. You know, versus the guys that are running around with vests on, they're bellboys. They're picking up the dishes, they're bringing the bread, they're filling the glasses of water, but, you know, you can't even give them an order sometimes. You got to wait for the waiter. So they saw him coming, okay? And what do they say? Before he reached them, they plotted to kill him, all right? So you see how you got to keep your debt short. You can't allow anger to become bitterness, bitterness to become hate, and hate become murder. You know, the first family had a murder in their family as well, Adam and Eve's sons. Okay? Murder is from the enemy. Here comes the dreamer, they said to each other. Come, now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these settlings. It's a well, actually, okay? And say that a furious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of the dreamer. Okay? So, now the firstborn's name was Reuben, and his mother was not Rachel or Rebecca, his mother was Leah. Okay? And this is where the conflict comes in with the children are from different mothers. So, Reuben heard this, and he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the settlement here in the desert. But don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back home to his father. So it's interesting because Reuben wasn't somebody who had a lot of integrity. He had slept with one of his father's concubines, which is a very dramatic sin. So, but he plans to rescue Joseph anyway. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the rich ornament robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him in. This is that well, okay? Now, it was empty, and there was no water in it. Well, so now they got him in a holding tank. And it's interesting what happens next. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the rich ornament robe that he wore. And they threw him into the well. And what do they do next? As they sit down to eat their meal, they look up and they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming. And now they get another idea, okay? The camels were loaded down with spices and all kinds of things that the Egyptians wanted. And these people really probably came from Saudi Arabia. They went up north into probably like Syria, got what they wanted, and brought it to Egypt, and they were merchants. And so talk about human trafficking, it's been around forever. Judah now steps up. Now, Judah's the fourth son of Leah and the fourth son to Abraham. Okay? I'm sorry, I meant Jacob. Judah says to his brothers, why would we gain if we kill our brother? Okay, he doesn't know Reuben's planning to rescue him and cover up his blood. Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and now not lay a hand on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. Now, was it because they wanted to be innocent? You know, first they weren't going to kill him, they were just going to let him starve to death in the well. Now they're thinking, well, it might be better if we sell him, and maybe it had something to do with monetary gain. But anyway, they just wanted to be rid of him, okay? So when the Midianites merchants came by, his brother pulled Joseph up out of it, the well, obviously, and sold him for 20 shekels of silver that the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. Interesting, okay? Yeshua was sold for 30 pieces of silver. And that was supposed to be the price of a slave. So they didn't even get the price of a slave for their brother. But they were, and this is a lot of times what we find with religious people, okay? They're going to do an evil thing, but they're going to do it in a certain way so that their conscience is not bothered, okay? Well, what happens is they take him down. Joseph is pulled up out of the well, and he's sold for the 20 shekels of silver from the Israelites and taken to Egypt. When Reuben returns, okay, now Reuben comes back to the well, right? And he saw that Joseph was not there. He tore his clothes. That was a sign of mourning, okay? These two brothers are very important later on in the story, so try to remember them, okay? The firstborn and the fourthborn. So he tears his robe, and then he wants to know where his brother is. When he went back and he said, the boy isn't there, where can I turn now? He's thinking of the return trip home, okay? He understands that his father is very emotional about this young man. And he realizes the damage that's going to be done by bringing a bad report home. And you're going to see that. Then they got Joseph's robe and slayed a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they took the ornament robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it and see whether it is your son's robe. Well, you know, Jacob was deceived his brother for the birthright. He was deceived by his father-in-law. He then ran away, kind of deceiving his father-in-law. And now he's being deceived again by his own sons. You see how sin enters a family and it's hard to get it out? Okay? Values are not taught. They're caught. They observe what you do, and then they copy that. So if you have a bad addictive habit of whatever, anger, drinking, gambling, you can expect your children to follow suit because they're watching you closely. He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some furious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his robe, his own clothes, and put on sackcloth. This is like a burlap garment. And mourned for his son many days. Well, you know what it is to shiver. That's 30-day period. You're going to find that Jacob wasn't going to be satisfied with that. He was probably going to mourn the rest of his life. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, in mourning I will go down to the grave to my son. So his father wept for him, and meanwhile the Midianites took Joseph to Egypt, to Potiphar, this was Pharaoh's high officer, okay, and captain of his guard. So that's what happened to Joseph. Now you're going to find, and I'm not going to read this part, but Judah kind of leaves the family, okay, and he marries a Canaanite woman, has 3 sons, marries one of them off, and his son was very evil. Okay, so this is Jacob's grandson, and the Lord takes him, okay, slays him. So in those days, if a woman didn't have any children by her husband, the next brother in line would have to marry her and give her children. But this son was evil too. And he refused to do that. He would have intercourse with this woman as his wife, but he would not allow his seed to fertilize her wound. And so the Lord struck him dead. So what happened then is Judah gets a little nervous, and he figures, well, if the third one marries her, he might get in trouble too. So he sends her home. And the younger boy grows up. And what happens is that he never gives the third son to her. So he goes off after his wife dies to take care of his sheep. He's going to shear them. And he goes to another area, I guess, to do that. And she hears that where he's going. And her name is Tamar. And she sits on the road like a prostitute with her face covered. And he propositions her. You see, when I say that, you know, he had some good qualities, but he also had some weaknesses. And what happens is he has intercourse with her. She propositions him. He gives his belt, and he says, when I send you your reward, which is a young goat, you'll give me back my belt with my shield and my walking stick. And, well, she does become pregnant. It's amazing how things work out. And what happens is that he finds out that she's pregnant. But he didn't know it was his daughter-in-law. He just found out his daughter-in-law was pregnant. And what happens is he says she should be executed. And before they execute her, she sends her father-in-law his belt and his shield and says, this is the man by which I became pregnant. And then he puts the story together. He realizes the prostitute he had on the road was really his daughter-in-law disguised. And when he went to send the goat, he couldn't find her. So he gave up, thinking, well, I tried to pay my debt, and I couldn't. I mean, you know, see how religious minds think? He's paying off a prostitute, and he's feeling good because I tried hard to be honest, but I can't. She's not around, so let's forget about it. We'll become a laughingstock. So then he realizes that she was more honorable than him. She was trying to fulfill her destiny by being a mother. She becomes pregnant. He has no more physical relationship with her, but she has twins, and one of those twins winds up being in the lineage of not only him, but in the lineage of David and eventually the lineage of the Messiah. So, because we know the Messiah comes from David's line. So it's an interesting story. Why did he move away? Why did he basically not stay with the family? Okay? I think he was so upset watching his father mourn for somebody that wasn't dead, not being able to tell his father that Joseph is alive and what we did to him. And he kept his mouth shut, and it was not easy living around him, so he moved away, married a Canaanite, and basically sinned terribly against his daughter-in-law. But his offspring from that relationship, God honors, because he's going to work through the tribe of Judah. That's where the word Jew comes from, those that are in the line of Judah. Okay? Are all the Jewish people in the other tribes Jews? Yes, they are. But they identify with Judah. And later on, you'll see geographically, the area that is called Judah is also the area where Jerusalem is. The city of David is in the area called Judah. And later on, when there's a civil war, well, they don't fight it out, but they separate. The tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah sticks together. But the other 10 tribes go north, and they get caught up into idolatry. So what's happening to Joseph now? Well, he was 17 years old probably when he was sold time is passing. His brother got married, and he's on his way a long time ago to Egypt, probably a couple of years already now. But I'll read this briefly, that when the slave traders get there, what they do is they sell them, and who buys them but Potiphar, which was the senior officer to Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh is not the king's name. It's a title, okay? So we're not sure. But we think at this time that Egypt was being ruled for 140 years by a group that came out of basically Palestine, maybe southern Israel today, and took over. And so that's also important later on when Pharaoh has a requirement and Joseph's able to fulfill it. So we're going to talk about how his family turned against Joseph. Now we're going to find out later on in next week's show, we're going to find out how Potiphar appreciated him, but his wife turned against him. And if you ever scorned a woman, you know there's duty to be paid. And so even if you're scorning a woman strictly because you're trying to stay within your integrity. Well, if you haven't seen any of our shows and you want to see a past show, go to our website, www.thefutureofisrael.org. And if you want to write to us, our new email is info@thefutureofisrael.org, and we'll give you a response. Now, if you have questions, write to us. If you feel that you disagree with something, fine. But by all means, communicate with us. And we appreciate you being here. So shalom. Be at peace. Thanks for watching us. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Be at peace.